dialogue from the first Terminator. Some of it is new dialogue, but all of it is new recordings that Linda Hamilton did as an uncredited cameo. So I thought that was really cool, really kind of connective tissue. Again, something that was missing from Terminator 3, because the tapes was a big deal. She was recording them the first one. In the deleted scene, Terminator 2, we saw that John had them, and I guess he had him in that nuclear bunker at the end. So it's Terminator 3, so it's survived Judgment Day. So that's really cool for her to come back for that.
Yeah, so I got a question on that. So, well, I'm watching it, and maybe this is only the kind of thing that you notice upon multiple rewatches, but it's like tape 28 she's talking about, and that's the first time she mentions his dad. She's like, I don't even know if I should tell you about Cal, about sending your father back. Would that affect your... It's like 28 tapes. Let's say these tapes are 60 minutes long, right? She's talked for like 28 hours, and she's just getting to Kyle Reese.
Man, I want to make a women talking joke somewhere in there, but I don't think I should. So we're just gonna keep moving on. You know how they talk, but I don't know.
What the hell did she talk about for 28 hours?
Have you talked to a woman on the phone before? All right, it's possible. But yeah, I get your point, Brandon. I mean, it was something she was saving to eventually talk about because it was difficult. So that's how I justify it. But that's a great point. I never thought about that before. It happens to rewatch these movies too many times to start noticing these things. Talking about Marcus Wright, Josh Brolin was actually considered and asked to play Marcus Wright, but he turned it down. And as
the Goonies?
Yes, the guy from the Goonies. Yes, Jonah Hex, Cable from Deadpool, and Thanos from the MCU is who we're talking about. Man, the guy from the Goonies. I love
the Goonies so much.
But ultimately, McGee with the Sam Worthington based off James Cameron's recommendation. Now, John Connor recast yet again here. Christian Bale doing his Batman voice the entire time.
Yep.
And Nick Stahl was interested in returning, but he was told by the people behind the film at the time that John Connor was going to be older, like 50-ish by the for Terminator 4, and that he would not be needed for the next movie. But I don't know if they just didn't want him back, if that changed. I like Christian Bale, right? I like him as an actor. He's my third favorite Batman after Michael Keaton and Ben Affleck, but that's another conversation. But he's a great charismatic guy to have here, although, again, the connective tissue between these movies gets lost by all this recasting. And even, Brandon, I know you weren't the biggest fan of Nick Stahl, but would you have liked to see him back just for continuity's sake, or...
Oh, that's a tough call because Christian Bale is just terrible in this movie.
Really?
Like,
you think so?
Yeah, man. The only thing I don't like, this is jumping into the conversation. The only thing I don't like about this movie is Christian Bale as John Connor. I do not think he was an appropriate casting choice, and I do not think his Batman Bruce Wayne voice does this movie any justice at all. And I don't know, he doesn't work for me. I'm glad that John Connor is not the primary focus of this movie, because if Christian Bale wasn't in this, I would probably give this movie 5 stars, but I knock a whole star off for Christian Bale. So, but Nick Stahl, I don't know that I'd want Nick Stahl back because I didn't like Nick Stahl either. So I don't know.
Edward Furlong, get your life together. We want you back. It's interesting you bring that up, though, because the reason I brought up Marcus and then John Connor was because initially Christian Bale was approached to play the Marcus character, and John Connor was going to show up at the end of the movie. But when they got Christian Bale on board, he's like, hey, I'm going to play John Connor because that's the one everybody knows. And so they're like, all right, well, let's expand that role. They move some stuff around. So I think that's why you kind of have it's kind of like the problem that Episode 1, The Phantom Menace has. Like, who is the protagonist of this movie, right? Because you got John Connor over here, you got Marcus Wright over here, you don't know. Originally, they were going to be the same person at the end, so it's all very complicated. But yeah, to your point there, Brandon, yeah, I mean, he was not going to be John Connor. They thought for him as the Marcus Wright character. Would you have liked him better as Marcus Wright, perhaps?
I probably would have.
It kind of fits the Christian Bale mold of being like not knowing what he is and then like finding out he's a robot later, like in a killing machine. That kind of fits like the stuff that he is into.
Sounds perfect for him. And I just want to say that not knowing the main character is not the only problem with The Phantom Menace.
Well, yes, but that it's a symptom of those kinds of movies for sure. So, Helena Bonham Carter, she actually replaced Tilda Swinton. Her character was based off a character called Serena Burns from the T2 Infiltrator novels by S.M. Stirling. Now, this is a series of books that take place after Terminator 2. They pick up everything, actually it was before Terminator 3 before anything else, so that was like as if there were going to be no more Terminator movies. This is a series of books, and there's a character that in there that looks like Arnold Schwarzenegger, is like the human model for the T-800. And again, all these side media, like books and comics and all these things with Terminator. Interesting that they just pulled a name out to assign to this character. Nothing else from that character, as I understand it, but just a name. So, and as I understand, that's a pretty interesting book series. So, if people are Terminator fans, go check out the T2 Infiltrator series there. And also, interesting enough that Helena Bonham Carter, she only has 5 minutes of screen time in this movie, but she gets like prominent billing.
I liked her casting in her role. Like, I thought she was really good. I loved when she came back at the end.
Mm-hmm.
I thought that was really creative to bring her back, and I thought her voice, I know they kind of like changed it a little bit, but I thought her voice worked well as this computer.
The voice of Skynet, basically. The avatar of Skynet. Avatar. That was unintentional.
It was a nice wraparound. I liked it.
Now, Terry Crews.
My man.
All right, Terry Crews was cast in the film as Common's brother, because when John Connor comes back to his base, Common comes up to him. He's like, "My brother." He's like, "No, I didn't make it." And we see his corpse sitting there.
No, he didn't make it.
We see him when John comes out of the hole there. We see that dead body there. That's Terry Crews. And
it's very, very Matrix-like with the two of them. Like,
like Link and
Tank
and Link.
Yeah. I think that's what
Good
I think
call
that was
there.
their
I think
names.
about that.
Yeah, that's kind of the vibe that I got with those two. I was just like, oh, I've seen this before.
And Lance, for all the listeners, who is Terry Crews and why is he famous?
Well, he's a football player, but he was an Old Spice guy, and he has a dancing pecs.
See, he is in incredible shape.
Yeah. He's on Brooklyn Nine-Nine at the moment.
So, if you saw him, you might recognize him. Well, there was going to, and these are deleted scenes of more action, above ground during that battle, and he would have been featured in that, but that was all cut. But he did cameo as a dead body.
Yeah.
Now the gas station, Brandon, the one I brought up in the last movie. This is allegedly the same gas station from the last 3 movies, the petrol station that they show up to and get kidnapped from. It's the same one from Terminator 1 where Sarah records the tape, gets the picture taken, the one for T2 where they go reset the chip, the one from T3 where he tells the guy to talk to the hand.
Uh-huh.
And, of course, here in Terminator 4 where it's just
But now it's a 7-Eleven.
But do you have you
when
seen...
did it go from an AM, PM to a 7-Eleven after the apocalypse?
That's a good point.
Somebody's
the timeline, because the timeline changed a little bit.
No, Judgment Day happened on that day.
That's a good point. This is a direct sequel to Terminator to Terminator 3. So I didn't think about that, Brandon. So perhaps this trivia is perhaps it's a fan theory that got out of control, but
Maybe.
As my understanding, this is supposed to be the same gas station.
But it's a 7-Eleven.
That's misinformation provided by Skynet.
Yeah, exactly. So,
unless this goes with my theory of the spiraling. The timeline's just spiraling.
That's a terrible theory,
bit
so no, I clearly cannot go
it's
with
a
that.
Great theory. Lance, I'm looking for a new co-host for Fanchise Fatigue.
Now, this was intended to be the first of a new Terminator trilogy about the future war.
Of course it was.
McGee was going to direct them all, but there was a mixed reception critically, and it allegedly underperformed financially, which I think like the standards for movies these days and how much money they have to make is ridiculous. So this movie cost $200 million. Right?
That's a lot of money,
and it made a worldwide gross of $371 million. So it didn't quite double its budget. That's usually the goal from these movies. So because of that, they decided to not carry on with this trilogy. Now they do this every single time with Terminator movies. Now there was supposed to be a trilogy coming off T3. There was supposed to be a trilogy coming off Terminator Salvation. There was supposed to be a trilogy coming off Terminator Genesis. Mm-hmm. And there's allegedly a trilogy coming from Terminator Dark Fate. I wish they would just take these, one movie at a time, stop planning this stuff out. At least plan it behind the scenes, obviously, but don't tell everybody it's the first of a trilogy, because that just looks embarrassing.
Yeah, set you up for failure.
So.
It's not set you up for success when you do that.
Yeah, see, I guessed it on a friend's podcast, and we talked about the Planet of the Apes trilogy, and that is a series of films that did it right, because the new Planet of the Apes trilogy, like they made each movie as good as they possibly could, right? Like, so they originally wanted to do a trilogy, but it's like they didn't focus on that. They focused on the one story that they had in front of them, and spoilers for whenever we get to that, but that's probably like the greatest trilogy made in like a really, really long time.
Last bit of trivia about this: there is an director's cut of this film that's 3 minutes longer. You know, it's funny, we talk about all these alternate scenes, deleted stuff. None of this is in the director's cut. I was a little bit disappointed.
Is Rogue in it?
No, it's not the Rogue cut from X-Men. That's its own conversation. But this is called the director's cut. It's about 3 minutes longer. Very minor changes, a little more violence. You see Moon Bloodgood naked, but from far away. You know, a little more of that going on. If you were unfamiliar with this film and like watched both cuts like 10 years apart, you would not be able to tell any of the differences. So,
man, Zach, I watched these movies like 2 days apart, and I couldn't tell the difference between the 2 movies. So I watched it 3 times. So right. So I watched the theatrical cut, then I watched the director's cut, and then tonight I watched the maximum movie mode. And I don't know, I couldn't tell the difference between the 2 at all. So.
I mean, I will always, as usual with these, I would always default to the director's cut or extended cut because I like seeing as much there is possible, unless it somehow ruins or undercuts the movie. I don't feel like anything ruins the movie here. It's so negligible. And the reason these 2 cuts exist is they cut out a little bit here and there to get a PG-13 rating. Because this is the first Terminator movie not to be rated R. But The Dark Knight, shocking that The Dark Knight influenced this movie, had come out a year before, and it was PG-13, and they felt, well, that didn't feel compromised in any way. So let's go ahead and make this one PG-13. But that's a stigma with this movie, too. A lot of people are like, why you make a Terminator PG-13? Not a big deal. I mean, I don't think it suffers either way, but that was the logic of why there's an R cut and a PG-13 cut.
See, let's talk about that for a second, because T3, when I watch it, I'm surprised that that's an R.
The profanity?
T3 is it's not too violent. Maybe it's more to do language. But in my opinion, they should have pulled T3 back to a PG-13 because it almost was a PG-13.
Well, I think if there's one thing from T3 that sticks out, it's when the TX punches through the guy's chest and drives the car.
Right.
Other than that, though, and the profanity, literally everything else in that movie, it's very clean, very clean violence.
It is, yeah. Like they don't show like when she shoots the guy at the drive-thru or the brother at the house. So, yeah. Cool, right on. Good job with the trivia. I really appreciate that, Zach. That's really good. Let us jump into our discussion. I don't know if you want to add any more to my discussion about my dislike of Christian Bale, but that's really the only negative that I have for this is him in this role. He just does not work for me at all.
I get it's like the mid-2000s and he's at peak Batman, right? And there he's doing the voice, right? I think it works better. And look, it works fine for John Connor. Like, I don't know. Like, I enjoyed him as the character. I think his introduction is amazing. Right? Like he comes down in this helicopter and lands on Terminator. Like it's just pan up. He shoots the Terminator and then like pans up and it's John Connor. Like this is the John Connor. Well, like always wanted to see.
Well, that that head gets crushed just like at the end of the first one. So it's like immediately we have this callback and we have this connective tissue on screen of the beginning of this franchise and to where we are now. And it's just cool.
Now for Christian Bale though, I will say that there are moments where he just starts yelling, which is amusing.
Well, see,
what are you?
Well, see, here's the thing. Okay, so we
talk about it.
We have to talk. We have to talk about this. His infamous rant against the lighting guy during the production of this movie.
What?
When I think of Terminator Salvation, that's the first thing I think of is Christian Bale going da 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 da, and good for you.
I don't know this.
It's just funny.
Have you never heard of this, Brandon?
No. What is this?
Are you serious? Oh my goodness gracious! All right. How? Everybody, stop. All right, Brandon, we just listened to it. What do you think?
I like Christian Bale even less now. Okay, the only other time I remember something like this, have you seen the bonus features for The Rock?
No.
So I got the Criterion edition for The Rock, and there's a behind-the-scenes thing with Ed Harris that you guys need to find out, where he's trying to do some lines and stuff, and there's this whole long thing, and they're calling it bloopers. It is the most uncomfortable couple of minutes I've ever sit watching a movie. There's a scene where he's talking on the phone, and he's screwing up his lines, and he's yelling at people off the set stuff, and he takes this receiver phone, and he just starts smashing it down at Harris. It reminds me of that, honestly, and I'm like, that's not cool.
Okay, so I right after this movie, or actually during this movie, I was interning at a TV station where I actually got my first job out of college, and I worked there for several years. And being in production, we would quote this to each other all the time. You're like, da-da-da-da-da. Why are you walking right through? You're a nice guy. You're a nice guy. But that's not going to cut it. Effing around on